a senior flight attendant grabbed an 8-year-old black boy by the arm and ripped him out of his first-class seat. He hit the aisle hard. His glasses flew off. His dead mother's notebook slammed to the floor. He looked up at her, confused, scared, shaking, and she leaned down and said, "Kids like you don't belong up here." 47 adults watched. Not one of them moved. That boy didn't cry. He picked up his phone and called his father. What that flight attendant didn't know was that his father was the CEO of the company that controlled every system keeping that airport running. 5 minutes after that call, the entire airport went dark. Before we begin, subscribe, follow this story to the end, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story reaches. The jet hadn't even reached cruising altitude, and James Carter had already made 4 more calls. He sat in the back of the Gulf Stream with his elbows on his knees and his phone pressed to his ear. His assistant, a woman named Denise, who had been with him for 9 years, was on the other end, trying to keep up. "Denise, I need the name of every crew member on that flight, not just cabin. I want the pilot, the co-pilot, and whoever was running the gate when my son boarded." "James, the airline's legal team is already calling us. They want to talk. They can talk when I get there. Right now, I want names." "I have the lead flight attendant, Linda Graves, 19 years with the airline, based out of Atlanta." 19 years. Yes. James leaned back. 19 years. That meant this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some new hire panicking under pressure. This was someone who had been doing this long enough to know exactly what she was doing and didn't care. What else? 2 prior complaints on file, both from passengers of color, both dismissed internally. James went quiet. James? They were dismissed, flagged, and closed. No disciplinary action either time. "Pull both files. I want every detail." Already on it. He hung up and stared out the window. Somewhere below him, the East Coast was scrolling past. Highways and cities and millions of people going about their lives. And in one airport, his son was sitting in an aisle with his dead mother's notebook on the floor and a woman's handprint, still warm, on his arm. James picked up his phone again. He called Malik. "Hey, buddy." "Hi, Dad." Malik's voice was small, tired, like somebody had let the air out of him. "Where are you right now?" "I'm sitting on the floor by the galley. They told me to wait here." "On the floor?" "Yes, sir. There's no seat. The other flight attendant gave me a blanket." James pressed his fist against his mouth. His son was sitting on the floor of an airplane, first-class ticket in his pocket. Sitting on the floor like a stray dog, somebody was trying to figure out what to do with. "Which flight attendant gave you the blanket?" "The man. He's nice. He told me he was sorry." "What's his name?" "His tag says Kevin." "Okay. Is the woman still there, the one who grabbed you?" "She's in the front. She keeps looking at me." "Dad, she looks mad, like I did something wrong." "You didn't do anything wrong." "I know, but she keeps looking at me like I did." "Malik, I need you to do something for me." "What?" "I need you to remember everything. Every word she said, every time she touched you. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." "Write it down in your notebook." Silence. "Malik?" "She won't let me get my notebook. It's still on the floor by my seat." James stood up in the jet. He actually stood up. His head nearly hit the ceiling. He sat back down and squeezed the armrest so hard the leather groaned. "I'll get your notebook back. I promise." "Okay, Dad. I love you. I'll be there soon." "How soon?" "Real soon, buddy. Real soon." He hung up. He looked at his phone for a long time. Then he called Kevin. Not Kevin directly. He called the airline operations desk and asked to be patched through to the cabin crew on Flight 1274. It took 6 minutes of being transferred and put on hold and transferred again before a voice answered. "This is Kevin Marsh, cabin crew, Flight 1274. "Kevin, this is James Carter, Malik Carter's father." Dead silence. "Sir, yes, Malik is right here. He's okay. I've been keeping an eye on him." "I appreciate that. I need you to do me a favor." "Of course." "My son's notebook is on the floor near seat 2A, brown leather. It belonged to his mother. She's deceased. I need you to pick it up and bring it to him right now." Kevin's voice dropped. Mr. Carter, I am so sorry about what happened. I tried to say something. I told Linda to check the manifest, but she wouldn't listen. You told her to check the manifest? Yes, sir, before she approached your son. I said, Linda, check the list first, and she said she didn't need to. Did anyone else hear her say that? The whole galley crew heard it, 3 of us. James closed his eyes. 3 witnesses, a crew member who told her to verify, and she refused. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was a choice. Kevin, I need you to write down exactly what you saw and what you heard. Time, location, who was present. Can you do that? Mr. Carter, I could get in trouble for... Kevin, you watched an 8-year-old child get dragged out of his seat. You told your supervisor to check the manifest, and she ignored you. The trouble isn't coming from me. The trouble is already here. I'm just asking you to tell the truth. Long pause. Yes, sir. I'll write it down. Thank you. And Kevin, sir, get my son his notebook right away. 41 minutes after the call to Tom Whitfield. That's how long it took for the first domino to fall. Tom had scrambled. He'd called the Atlanta hub. He'd called the crew scheduling office. He'd called the VP of customer experience. And every single one of them had told him the same thing. Handle it. Now, before Carter shuts us down. Because by then, the hold was already biting. At Hartsfield-Jackson, the operations center was in a state of controlled chaos. Carter Global's systems handled the digital backbone of ground operations. Gate assignments, fuel truck routing, runway sequencing data, de-icing coordination. None of it was down. James hadn't killed anything. He was smarter than that. He had simply frozen all updates. No new data flowing in. No patches, no system refreshes, which meant that within an hour, the entire ground operation would be running on stale information. Fuel trucks dispatched to wrong gates, runway sequences out of sync, baggage systems lagging. Nothing catastrophic yet, but the clock was ticking, and everyone in that control center knew it. The airport's operations director, a man named Russell Hayes, had made 3 calls to Carter Global in 20 minutes. Each time, he got the same answer. Mr. Carter is unavailable. All system authorizations are suspended, pending his personal review. Russell picked up the phone and called the airline directly. Whatever happened on that plane, fix it. Fix it now, because if Carter's systems go stale for another hour, I'm going to have 60 planes sitting on taxiways with nowhere to go. That call reached Tom Whitfield, who was already in a car heading to the airport. Tom called the aircraft. He got the captain. Captain Howard, this is Tom Whitfield, Regional Director. I need a full status on the situation in your cabin. Captain Marcus Howard was a 30-year veteran. Calm, measured. Not a man who rattled easily. But when he spoke, there was something tight in his voice. Tom, I just found out what happened. I was in the cockpit running pre-flight when the call came in. My lead flight attendant removed an 8-year-old child from his ticketed seat without verifying his boarding pass, without checking the manifest, and without informing me. She physically pulled him from the seat. The child has a valid first-class ticket. I've confirmed it myself. Where is the child now? Sitting on the floor near the aft galley because she told him to wait there. On the floor? On the floor, Tom. An 8-year-old child with a confirmed first-class ticket is sitting on the floor of my aircraft. And his father is James Carter. Silence. Tom, are you there? I'm here. I need authority to override Linda's decision and reseat the child immediately. You're the captain. You have that authority. I'm asking for corporate backing because when I do this, Linda is going to file a crew conflict report, and I'm not going to let her paperwork her way out of this. You have full backing. Reseat the child now. I'll deal with Linda when I get there. One more thing, Tom. What? Kevin Marsh, one of my cabin crew, told Linda to check the manifest before she approached the boy. She refused. He told me this himself. I want that on record. It's on record. Good, because I've been flying for 30 years and I have never been this ashamed of what happened on my aircraft. Captain Howard hung up and walked out of the cockpit. He found Malik sitting on the floor near the galley. Kevin had brought him his notebook. Malik was holding it against his chest with both arms, the way you hold something you're afraid of losing again. His eyes were red but dry. His blazer was still wrinkled. His glasses were still a little crooked. Captain Howard knelt down in front of him. "Malik, my name is Captain Howard. I'm the pilot of this aircraft." Malik looked up. "Hello, sir." "Son, I owe you an apology. What happened to you should not have happened. It was wrong, and I'm going to make it right." "Am I in trouble?" Captain Howard's jaw tightened. An 8-year-old child dragged out of his seat, shoved into the aisle, forced to sit on the floor, and his first question was whether he was in trouble? "No, Malik, you are not in trouble. You were in the right seat. You had the right ticket. You did nothing wrong." "The lady said I didn't belong." "The lady was wrong, and she will be held accountable for that." "My dad is coming. I know he is. He's going to be mad." Captain Howard looked at this child, this small, quiet, brave child, holding his dead mother's notebook, and said the only honest thing he could. "Your dad has every right to be." He stood up and extended his hand. "Come with me." Malik took his hand. Captain Howard walked him back through the cabin. Every single passenger watched. The woman across the aisle, the older gentleman, the businessman. All of them. Every face that had looked away 30 minutes ago was now watching as a captain personally escorted an 8-year-old boy back to seat 2A. Nobody clapped. Nobody said, "Good for you." Nobody pretended this was a feel-good moment. Because it wasn't. It was a correction. A late, inadequate correction of something that should never have happened in the first place. Malik sat down in his seat. He put his notebook on his lap. He looked out the window. Captain Howard leaned down. "Is there anything you need? Can I have some water?" "Absolutely." Kevin brought him water and a warm cookie from the galley and a pair of wings, the metal pin they give to kids visiting the cockpit. Malik pinned the wings to his blazer, right next to the spot where Linda had grabbed him. He didn't smile, but something in his shoulders relaxed, just a little. Linda Graves was standing at the front of the cabin when Captain Howard walked back up. "Linda." "Captain, I can explain." "No, you can't. You are relieved of your duties on this flight. You will remain in the crew rest area until we receive further instruction from corporate. You are not to speak to any passengers. You are not to approach that child. Am I clear?" "Marcus, this is ridiculous. The kid didn't look like he belonged." "Didn't look like he belonged? Based on what? You didn't check his ticket. You didn't check the manifest. Kevin told you to verify, and you refused. So what exactly did you base your decision on, Linda?" She didn't answer. "That's what I thought. Crew rest. Now." Linda's face went white, then red, then something else. Not shame, something harder. The look of someone who has never been told no in 19 years and can't process the fact that it's happening now. She walked to the back without another word. 1 hour and 12 minutes after Malik's phone call, James Carter's jet touched down at Hartsfield-Jackson. He didn't go through the terminal. A car met him on the tarmac and drove him directly to the gate where Flight 1274 was still parked. The plane hadn't moved. Couldn't move. Ground clearance was still frozen. No departure authorization had been issued because the systems that issued them were still on hold. James stepped out of the car and walked toward the jetway. Tom Whitfield was standing there, sweating, tie loosened. 2 airline executives flanked him. Behind them, the airport's operations director, Russell Hayes, stood with his arms crossed and a look on his face that said he'd been awake for 3 hours too many. Tom stepped forward. "James, I want you to know that we take this extremely seriously, and we are committed to, where is my son?" Tom stopped. "He's been reseated. Captain Howard personally escorted him back to, I didn't ask what happened. I asked where he is." "He's in seat 2A. James nodded once. He walked past all of them. Tom, the executives, Russell, all of them. He didn't shake a hand. He didn't make eye contact. He walked down the jetway like it was a hallway in his own house. He stepped onto the aircraft. The cabin went silent. Every single person on that plane had been sitting there for over an hour. No announcement, No explanation, just a ground hold that nobody could explain. And now a tall black man in a tailored suit was walking through their cabin with the kind of authority that made you sit up straighter without knowing why. James walked to row 2. Malik looked up. And that was when the boy finally cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just tears rolling down his face, steady and quiet, the way rain comes down when the sky has been holding it too long. James knelt in the aisle. He didn't care about the passengers watching. He didn't care about the phones recording. He didn't care about anything except the small boy in the navy blazer with crooked glasses and a dead mother's notebook in his lap. "Dad, I'm here. She said I didn't belong. She was wrong. I tried to be brave. You were brave. You were the bravest person on this airplane." Malik fell into his father's arms. James held him tight. One hand on the back of his son's head, the other wrapped around his small body. And he held him the way you hold something that the world just tried to break. He closed his eyes. He could smell his wife's perfume. Faint, almost gone, but still there in the fabric of the blazer she used to button up for their son every morning. He whispered something into Malik's ear. Nobody heard what it was. That was between a father and his son, and the memory of a woman who wasn't there anymore. Then James Carter stood up. He looked at the cabin. 47 faces looked back. Some guilty, some ashamed, some just scared. The older gentleman in row 3 had tears in his eyes. The woman across the aisle was openly crying. The businessman in row 5 was staring at his hands like he wanted to disappear. James didn't address them. He didn't make a speech. He didn't need to. Every person in that cabin knew what they had done, or more accurately, what they hadn't done. He straightened his jacket, adjusted his cufflinks. Those small gold wings caught the overhead light. He walked to the front of the cabin where the captain was waiting. "Captain Howard? Mr. Carter? Thank you for taking care of my son. I'm sorry it took as long as it did. I should have known sooner." "You didn't know because your lead flight attendant didn't tell you. That's not on you." Captain Howard nodded. His eyes were red. "Where is she?" James asked. "Crew rest. She's been relieved of duty." "I want to see her." Captain Howard hesitated. "Mr. Carter, I'm not sure that's... I'm not going to yell at her. I'm not going to touch her. I just want to look at her." The captain studied James for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. James walked to the crew rest area at the back of the plane. The curtain was drawn. He pulled it open. Linda Graves was sitting on the narrow bench. Her arms were crossed. Her jaw was set. When she saw James, something flickered in her eyes. Not fear, recognition. She knew who he was. She'd figured it out by now. Everyone had told her. James looked at her. She looked at him. He didn't speak for a long time. 10 seconds. 20. Long enough for the silence to become its own kind of pressure. Then he said, very quietly, "He's 8. His mother is dead. That notebook you knocked out of his hands is the last thing she ever gave him. He flew alone today because I was trying to teach him that the world is safe enough to trust. You taught him something different." Linda opened her mouth. "Don't," James said. "I didn't come back here for your explanation. I came back here so you could see my face, so that when everything that happens next happens, you remember that it started with a choice you made, not a policy, not a misunderstanding, a choice." He let the curtain fall closed. He walked back through the cabin. He stopped at Malik's seat. His son was drinking water, holding the cup with both hands. The metal wings pin was still on his blazer. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy?" "Are we going home?" James looked at his son. Then he looked out the window at the airport that was still frozen, that was still waiting, that was still holding its breath because he hadn't given permission to exhale. "Not yet," he said. "We got something to do first." James Carter walked off that airplane holding his son's hand. Malik's carry-on was over James's shoulder. The notebook was tucked under Malik's arm. The metal wings pin was still on his blazer. They walked up the jetway together, side by side, and when they stepped into the terminal, Tom Whitfield was standing there with 2 airline executives and Russell Hayes, and all 4 of them looked like men who hadn't slept in a week, even though it had only been 2 hours. Tom stepped forward. James, we've arranged a private lounge where we can sit down and... I don't want a lounge, Tom. We just want to have a conversation. Work through this. You want to have a conversation? Good, so do I. But we're not doing it in a back room where nobody can see. We're going to your airline's operations office right here in this terminal. And Russell, you're coming too. Russell Hayes uncrossed his arms. Mr. Carter, I understand you're upset, but the system hold is affecting the entire airport. We have 73 flights delayed and counting. If we could just... 73? As of 6 minutes ago. Then I suggest we walk fast. James didn't wait for them. He started walking. Malik walked beside him. Tom and the executives scrambled to keep up. Russell fell in step behind them, his phone already buzzing with calls he couldn't answer. They moved through the terminal and people stared. Not because they recognized James Carter. Most of them didn't. They stared because an 8-year-old boy in a wrinkled navy blazer was walking through the busiest airport in America next to a man in a tailored suit who moved like he owned the floor beneath him. And behind them, 4 men in expensive clothes were practically jogging to keep pace. Something was happening. Everybody could feel it. 2:47 p.m. They reached the airline's operations office on the second level of the terminal. Tom badged them in. A conference room was already set up. Water bottles on the table, legal pads. Someone had even put out a tray of pastries, like this was a business lunch. James looked at the pastries. Then he looked at Tom. He didn't say anything about them. He didn't need to. He pulled out a chair for Malik. Sit here, buddy. You hungry? A little. Eat whatever you want. He pushed the tray toward his son. Then he turned to face the room. Tom sat down across from him. The 2 executives, a woman named Sandra Mitchell from Customer Relations and a man named Derek Hale from Legal, took seats on either side. Russell Hayes stood by the door with his phone on silent, arms crossed again. James didn't sit. Here's what's going to happen, he said. I'm going to talk. You're going to listen. When I'm done, you're going to respond. Not before. Nobody objected. My son boarded your aircraft today with a valid first-class ticket. Seat 2A. The booking was made through your website 4 weeks ago. The unaccompanied minor forms were filed, signed, and confirmed by your staff 3 days ago. I personally called your customer service line the day before departure and spoke to a supervisor named Rachel, employee ID 7742, who confirmed every detail of the reservation. He paused. Despite all of that, your senior flight attendant, Linda Graves, approached my son, did not verify his boarding pass, did not consult the manifest, did not contact the gate agent, and physically removed him from his seat. She grabbed an 8-year-old child by the arm, pulled him into the aisle, shoved his belongings at him, and told him, and I quote, "Kids like you don't belong up here." Sandra Mitchell closed her eyes. She then refused to allow him to retrieve his personal property, a notebook that belonged to his deceased mother, from the floor where it fell. She forced him to sit on the floor near the aft galley with no seat, no explanation, and no supervision other than a junior crew member named Kevin Marsh, who, by the way, told Linda to check the manifest before she approached my son. She refused. Tom's face was gray. A member of your own crew told her to follow protocol. She chose not to. That means this wasn't a mistake, Tom. It wasn't a miscommunication. It wasn't a system error. It was a decision made by a 19-year veteran employee who, according to my team's preliminary findings, has 2 prior complaints on her record, both from passengers of color, both dismissed by your internal review process. Derek Hale, the legal executive, shifted in his seat. Mr. Carter, I want to assure you that we take... I told you I'd let you know when it was your turn. Derek closed his mouth. 2 prior complaints, both dismissed, which means your airline knew, or should have known, that you had a crew member with a documented pattern of behavior, and you put her in a position where she could do exactly what she did to my son. That's not just negligence, Derek. Where I come from, that's a choice, too. James reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He set it on the table. 12 minutes ago, my legal team received copies of the gate security footage from this terminal. I haven't watched it yet, but I will. And so will the public, because 3 passengers on that aircraft have already posted video of the incident online. As of 20 minutes ago, one of those videos had 40,000 views. My head of communications tells me it'll hit 1 million by tonight. Sandra Mitchell put her hand over her mouth. So here's my question, and this is where you get to talk. What exactly is your airline prepared to do about this? And I don't mean a statement. I don't mean a gift card. I don't mean an upgrade on his next flight. I mean, what are you actually going to do? Silence held the room for a long time. Tom Whitfield spoke first. His voice was thin, careful. Like a man walking on ice he knew was cracking. James, first, let me say on behalf of the airline, we are deeply sorry for what happened to Malik. There is no excuse. None. Linda Graves has been suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. Suspended. Yes. Not terminated. Tom hesitated. The investigation needs to... Tom, she put her hands on my child. She used language that on camera, in front of witnesses, revealed exactly what motivated her actions. And your airline's own crew member told her to check the manifest, and she refused. What exactly is the investigation going to find that we don't already know? Tom looked at Derek. Derek looked at Sandra. Sandra looked at the table. Nobody had an answer. James pulled out a chair and sat down for the first time. He folded his hands on the table. Let me tell you what I think the investigation is going to find. It's going to find that Linda Graves looked at my son and saw a black child in a seat she didn't think he should be in. It's going to find that she made a judgment based on nothing other than what he looked like. It's going to find that she had done this before, and your airline let her keep doing it. And it's going to find that 47 passengers on that aircraft watched it happen, and not a single one intervened. He looked at Malik. The boy was eating a pastry, quiet, holding his notebook on his lap with one hand. He was listening. James knew he was listening, and he wanted him to hear this. I'm not here to bankrupt your airline. I'm not here to burn this place down. I am here because my son was humiliated, and I want to know that it's never going to happen again. Not to him, not to any child. 3:12 p.m. Russell Hayes' phone buzzed. He stepped out of the room. 30 seconds later, he came back. We're at 91 delayed flights. Every head in the room turned to James. James didn't react. He kept his eyes on Tom. I'll release the system hold when I'm satisfied that this conversation is producing something real, not before. Tom leaned forward. James, I understand your anger. I do. But 91 flights means thousands of passengers, families, children, people with connections, medical needs. Don't talk to me about children, Tom. Not today, not right now. Tom sat back. Sandra Mitchell spoke for the first time. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Mr. Carter, I oversee customer relations for this airline. I've been in this role for 7 years, and I'm going to be honest with you because I think that's what you need right now. Our bias training program is outdated. It's a 2-hour online module that most employees click through without reading. Our complaint review process is handled internally by supervisors, who are often personal colleagues of the accused. And our unaccompanied minor protocols have not been updated since 2014. Derek shot her a look. She ignored him. What happened to your son is a systemic failure, not just one person. The system allowed this to happen. And I don't think a suspension and an apology fix a systemic failure. James looked at her for a long time. What's your name? Sandra Mitchell. Sandra, you're the first honest person I've talked to in this building today. So let me ask you directly. If you had the authority to change this, what would you do? Sandra glanced at Tom. Tom gave a small nod. I would overhaul the bias training program, not online modules, in person, mandatory, with outside facilitators. I would restructure the complaint review process so that it's handled by an independent body, not by colleagues. I would implement mandatory manifest verification before any crew member approaches a passenger about their seating. And I would establish a child travel protection protocol that includes crew accountability at every stage of boarding. James nodded slowly. How long would that take? To design? 60 days. To implement system-wide? 6 months. You've clearly thought about this before. I've been trying to get this approved for 3 years, Mr. Carter. Nobody listened. James turned to Tom. Is that true? Tom's jaw tightened. Sandra has made proposals in the past. The cost projections were, I'm not asking about cost projections. I'm asking if she told you this was a problem and you didn't act. Tom didn't answer. That's an answer, Tom. James stood up. He walked to the window. He could see the tarmac from here. Planes lined up, not moving. Fuel trucks parked, baggage carts idle. The entire machine was frozen because he had told it to freeze. He knew the power he was holding. He knew what it meant. And he knew that if he held it too long, he'd become the story instead of his son. The headlines would shift from what happened to Malik to what James Carter did to an airport. And that wasn't the point. That was never the point. He turned back to the room. Here's what's going to happen, and this is not a negotiation. He walked back to the table. 1. Linda Graves is terminated. Today. Not suspended, not reassigned, terminated. If your investigation needs to run, it runs. But she doesn't wear that uniform again. Tom opened his mouth. James raised his hand. 2. Sandra's reform package is approved and funded within 30 days. Every element she described. In-person bias training, independent complaint review, manifest verification protocols, child travel protections. All of it. Carter Global will co-fund the program and provide independent oversight for the first 2 years. Sandra's eyes went wide. 3. The 2 prior complaints against Linda Graves are reopened. Those passengers are contacted. They are offered a personal apology, and they're asked to participate in the development of the new training curriculum, if they choose to. Derek was writing furiously on his legal pad. 4. A public statement is issued by your CEO, not your PR team, your CEO, acknowledging what happened, taking responsibility, and outlining the specific reforms. No corporate language, no passive voice, a human being talking to other human beings. Tom nodded slowly. 5. And this is the one that matters most to me. James looked at Malik. The boy had stopped eating. He was watching his father with wide eyes. A scholarship fund is established for minority youth in aviation and aerospace, funded annually by your airline, named after my wife, Denise Carter, who spent her last year of life telling our son that the sky had no ceiling. The room went dead quiet. Malik's hand tightened on his notebook. James's voice didn't crack, but it thinned, just for a second. Just enough for everyone in that room to understand that this wasn't a boardroom tactic. This was a father standing in front of the people who hurt his son and turning it into something his wife would have been proud of. You name that fund after her, and you give kids like Malik a chance to fly, not just as passengers, as pilots, as engineers, as the people who build these airports and these airplanes and these systems that move the world. Sandra Mitchell was crying. She wasn't hiding it. Tom Whitfield rubbed his face with both hands. He looked old, tired, beaten. But when he dropped his hands, there was something else in his eyes, something that looked, for the first time that day, like actual remorse. James, I'll take it to the board tonight. You'll take it to the board in the next hour, because that's how long I'm going to wait before I release the system hold. 1 hour? 1 hour. I suggest you make your calls. Tom stood up. Derek stood up. They walked out of the room together. Through the glass wall, James could see Tom already on his phone, pacing, talking fast, gesturing with his free hand. Russell Hayes stepped forward. Mr. Carter, if you release the hold, I can have ground ops back to normal in 20 minutes. You'll have it within the hour, Russell. I appreciate your patience. My patience ran out 45 minutes ago, but I understand why you did what you did. Do you? Russell looked at Malik, then back at James. Yeah, I do. He walked out. Sandra Mitchell was still sitting at the table. She hadn't moved. Her eyes were red. She was looking at James like she was seeing something she'd been waiting a long time to see. 3 years, she said. I've been fighting for this for 3 years. I know. They always said the budget wasn't there. The timing wasn't right. The metrics didn't justify it. And today? Today, a man shut down an airport to protect his son, and suddenly, the budget is there. That's how it works sometimes. It shouldn't have to work this way. No, it shouldn't. She stood up. She extended her hand. James shook it. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Thank you for being honest, Sandra. That took more courage than anything I did today. She left. James was alone with Malik. The boy was sitting in his chair with his notebook open. He'd been drawing. James walked over and looked down at the page. Malik had drawn an airplane. But this one was different from his usual sketches. This one had 2 people in the cockpit, a tall man and a small boy. And on the wing, in careful 8-year-old handwriting, he had written a single word: Mom. James sat down next to his son. He didn't say anything for a while. They just sat there together in that conference room while the airport hummed and buzzed and argued and scrambled around them. Dad? Yeah? Is the lady going to get fired? Yes. Good. James looked at him. Is that mean? Malik asked. No, buddy. That's not mean. That's consequences. What's going to happen now? A lot of things. Things that are going to help other kids. Kids like me? Kids like you. Malik nodded. He looked down at his drawing. Dad, do you think Mom would be proud of me? James put his arm around his son. He pulled him close. He kissed the top of his head. Malik, your mother would be so proud of you, she wouldn't be able to stand it. 3:58 p.m. Tom Whitfield walked back into the room. His face had changed. The gray was still there, but something else had replaced the fear, something that looked like resolve, or at least the beginning of it. The board approved it, all 5 points, effective immediately. James nodded. Linda Graves has been terminated. HR is processing it now. She's been escorted from the aircraft. The statement? Our CEO will deliver it personally at 6 p.m. Eastern, live, on camera. We're drafting it now. No corporate language. No corporate language. The scholarship fund? Initial funding approved, $1 million annually, named the Denise Carter Aviation Scholarship. Sandra is leading the design. James closed his eyes for just a moment. When he opened them, they were wet. And the system reforms? Sandra's package is greenlit. Full budget. She has 60 days to design, 6 months to implement. Your oversight team will have full access. Okay. James. Yeah? I'm sorry. Not as an executive. As a person. As a father. I'm sorry. James stood up. He straightened his jacket. He adjusted his cufflinks. He looked at Tom for a long time. Prove it. He picked up his phone. He made one call. This is James Carter. Authorization code November Charlie 47. Release the hold. All systems. Full operational clearance. Effective immediately. He hung up. 4 minutes later, the departure boards at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport flickered back to life. Gate numbers updated. Runway sequences refreshed. Fuel trucks rolled. Baggage belts moved. The busiest airport in America started breathing again. And in a conference room on the second level of the terminal, an 8-year-old boy closed his notebook and took his father's hand. Dad? Yeah, buddy? Can we go home now? James looked down at his son. That wrinkled blazer, those crooked glasses, that notebook held tight against his chest, those small gold wings pinned right where Linda Graves had grabbed him. Yeah, James said. Let's go home. They walked out together. Tom Whitfield watched them go. He stood at the window and watched James Carter walk through the terminal, holding his son's hand, moving through the crowd like the crowd wasn't even there. People parted. Not because they knew him, because something about a father holding his son's hand that tight, that close, with that kind of quiet fury still radiating off him like heat from asphalt, made people step aside without knowing why. And in the crew lounge on the far side of the terminal, Linda Graves sat alone with a box of her personal belongings. Her badge was gone. Her lanyard was gone. 19 years of seniority, gone. She was staring at the wall, and for the first time in a very long time, she had nothing to say. But this story was far from over, because the video was still spreading. The phones that recorded Malik being dragged from his seat had already been uploaded, shared, reposted, and screenshotted 100,000 times. By the time James and Malik reached the car waiting on the tarmac, the passenger count on the most viewed clip had crossed 2 million. And the world was about to have an opinion. 6:14 p.m. The video hit 5 million views. James and Malik were in the back of a black SUV heading to the Carter Global corporate suite at the Ritz-Carlton when Patricia Owens called. "James, you need to see what's happening." "I'm with Malik. What's going on?" "The video, the one from the plane, it's everywhere. CNN picked it up 20 minutes ago. MSNBC is running it on a loop. Fox has a panel debating whether you had the right to shut down the airport. And the clip of Linda saying, 'kids like you,' is trending #1 nationally." James looked at Malik. The boy was leaning against the window, eyes half closed, exhausted. His notebook was on his lap. His hand was still holding James's sleeve. "What are people saying?" Most of it is outrage, massive support for Malik. But there's a second wave forming, people questioning whether you abused your power, whether shutting down an airport was justified. A senator from Georgia already made a statement calling it corporate overreach. Which senator? Reynolds. James almost laughed. Senator Bill Reynolds, the same man who had asked Carter Global to sponsor his re-election fundraiser 6 months ago. James had said no. Of course it's Reynolds. What else? The airline stock dropped 4% in after-hours trading. Their CEO's 6 o'clock statement got pushed to 7 because their legal team is rewriting it. And James, there's something else. What? Linda Graves hired an attorney. She's claiming wrongful termination. She's saying she followed standard procedure and that she was fired because of your personal influence over the airline. James went quiet. James? She's saying she followed procedure. That's her claim. The procedure for removing a child from a ticketed seat without checking the manifest is what exactly? I know, it's absurd, but her attorney is Martin Hale. James knew that name. Martin Hale was a labor attorney out of Atlanta who had built his career on suing airlines on behalf of terminated employees. He was loud, aggressive, and very good at turning public sympathy. When did she hire him? Within the last hour, he's already talking to press. He gave a statement to a local affiliate saying Linda is the real victim here, that she was doing her job and was fired because a billionaire made a phone call. A billionaire. That's the word he used. James looked out the window. The city was moving past him. Lights coming on, people heading home from work. Normal life happening all around while his life was being turned into a national debate. Patricia set up a press conference tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Where? The airport, right there at Hartsfield-Jackson, in the main terminal. James, are you sure? The media is already framing this as David versus Goliath, but they can't decide which one you are. Then I'll make it clear, 9 a.m. And Patricia? Yeah? Call Sandra Mitchell at the airline. Tell her I want her standing next to me when I speak. Sandra? Why? Because she tried to fix this 3 years ago and nobody listened. Tomorrow, they're going to listen. He hung up. Malik stirred. Dad, are people mad at you? James looked at his son. Some people are, buddy. Why? You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes when you stand up for what's right, people get upset about how you did it instead of why you did it. That's not fair. No, it's not. Are you scared? James smiled, the first real smile in hours. You know what your mom used to say? What? She used to say, scared is just brave before it gets dressed in the morning. Malik laughed. A real laugh, small and tired, but real. And that sound, that one little laugh from his son, was worth more to James Carter than every contract, every system, and every dollar he'd ever earned. 7:03 p.m. The airline CEO went live. His name was Richard Caldwell. 62 years old, silver hair, blue suit. He stood behind a podium at the airline's Atlanta headquarters and read from a teleprompter. He started with the standard language. We are deeply troubled by the incident. We hold our employees to the highest standards. We are conducting a thorough investigation. James watched from the hotel suite. Malik was in the next room with Denise, eating pizza and drawing in his notebook. James stood in front of the television with his arms crossed. Patricia was on the phone. He's reading it like a quarterly earnings report. I know. This isn't what you asked for. No, it's not. Caldwell continued. He expressed concern for the passenger involved. He used the word regrettable. He said the airline was committed to improvement. He mentioned that the employee had been terminated. He did not say Linda Graves's name. He did not say Malik's name. He did not say the words racial bias. He did not say the words kids like you. He spoke for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Then he took no questions and walked off. James picked up his phone and called Tom Whitfield. Tom answered on the first ring. James, I know what you're going to say. Well, that wasn't what we agreed on. Legal rewrote it. I fought them on it. Caldwell's team took over. Tom, I sat in that room with you 6 hours ago, and I told you no corporate language. I told you a human being talking to other human beings. And your CEO just got on national television and read a liability management script. I know. You know what the public is going to hear? They're going to hear a man who's more worried about lawsuits than an 8-year-old child. I tried, James. Try harder. Because tomorrow morning, I'm standing in your terminal at 9 a.m., and I'm going to say everything your CEO should have said tonight. And the contrast is going to be devastating. He hung up. 7:41 p.m. Martin Hale went on CNN. James watched. Patricia watched. Even Denise came in from the next room and watched. Martin Hale was a big man with a thick Southern accent and a talent for sounding reasonable while saying unreasonable things. He sat across from the anchor and folded his hands. My client, Linda Graves, is a 19-year veteran flight attendant who has served this airline with distinction. She made a judgment call on that aircraft. Was it the right call? Perhaps not. But what happened next was not accountability. It was retaliation by a powerful man who used his corporate position to shut down a public airport and bully a private company into firing a working-class woman within hours, without due process. The anchor pushed back. Mr. Hale, the video shows your client physically removing a child from his seat. The child had a valid ticket. My client believed there was a discrepancy. She acted on that belief. She didn't check the manifest. In the heat of a boarding process, decisions are made quickly. My client has handled thousands of flights. She followed her instincts. Her instincts told her to grab an 8-year-old child. My client denies any excessive physical contact. Patricia muted the television. He's good. He's a liar, James said. He's a good liar. And right now, he's planting a seed. By tomorrow, half the country is going to be asking whether Linda is the victim. She grabbed my son. I know that. You know that. The video shows that. But Hale isn't arguing facts. He's arguing narrative. Rich black CEO versus working class white woman. He's going to make this about class and power, not race. James stared at the muted screen. Hale was still talking, gesturing, performing, and the anchor was letting him. Patricia, I need Kevin Marsh. The flight attendant? He told Linda to check the manifest. She refused. He saw the whole thing. I need him to go on record, publicly. James, he's a junior crew member. If he goes public, the airline could retaliate. Then we protect him. We bring him under our legal umbrella, pro bono, full representation. If that airline touches him, we bury them. You want to spend money protecting a flight attendant who works for the company you're fighting? I want to protect the one person on that airplane who tried to do the right thing. Get him on the phone. 8:22 p.m. Patricia reached Kevin Marsh. He was at home. His wife answered. She sounded scared. When Kevin got on the phone, his voice was shaking. Mr. Carter, I saw the news. I saw Martin Hale on TV. He's saying Linda followed procedure. That's a lie. I was there. I told her to check the manifest. She looked at me and said she didn't need to. She knew exactly what she was doing. Kevin, I believe you. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think about it carefully. Okay? Would you be willing to say that publicly, on camera? Long silence. Mr. Carter, I've got 2 kids. I've been with this airline for 4 years. If I go on camera, they'll find a reason to fire me. Not if we protect you. My legal team will represent you. Full whistleblower protection. If the airline retaliates, we take them to federal court. And Kevin, I'll say this. You're the only person on that airplane who spoke up for my son. Everyone else looked away. You didn't. Kevin's voice broke. I should have done more. I should have stepped in front of her. I keep replaying it. I keep seeing your boy's face when she grabbed him. I just stood there. You didn't just stand there. You told her to stop. You gave my son his notebook back. You gave him a blanket. You're not the villain in this story, Kevin. You're the only adult on that plane who acted like one. Silence. I'll do it. Are you sure? My wife is sitting right here. She says if I don't do this, she's going to do it for me. James almost smiled. Thank your wife for me. When? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., press conference at the airport. I'll have a car pick you up. Mr. Carter? Yeah? Your son, Malik. Is he okay? James looked toward the room where Malik was drawing. He's drawing airplanes. Good. That kid is something special. I know. 9:17 p.m. James sat on the edge of Malik's bed. The boy was in his pajamas. His notebook was on the nightstand. His glasses were folded neatly on top. The metal wings pin was sitting next to them. Dad? Yeah, buddy? The lady from the plane, the mean one, she's on TV? You saw that? Denise was watching on her phone. I saw a little bit. James sighed. He'd wanted to keep Malik away from all of it, shield him, let him be 8 years old for a few more hours. But the world doesn't wait for children to be ready. What did you see? A man was talking about her. He said she was just doing her job. What do you think about that? Malik was quiet for a moment. Really quiet. The kind of quiet that meant he was thinking hard. Dad, if she was just doing her job, why did she say, kids like me? If it was about the seat, she could have checked my ticket. She didn't. She just looked at me and decided. James stared at his son, 8 years old, and he understood it clearer than half the commentators on television. You're right, Malik. Dad? Yeah? Am I going to have to talk to people, like on TV? No, absolutely not. You're 8 years old. You don't have to talk to anyone. But what if I want to? James paused. What do you mean? Tomorrow, at the press conference. Denise told me about it. She said you're going to talk at the airport. I am? Can I come? Malik, you don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to. Mom always said if something scares you, that's how you know it matters. James felt something crack inside his chest. Not break, crack open, the way light gets through. Your mother said that? All the time. She said it when she was sick, too. She said being brave about it meant it still mattered. James pulled his son close. He held him. He didn't trust his own voice for a long time. Okay, he finally said, you can come. Dad? Yeah? Can I wear my blazer? The navy one? Yeah, Mom's blazer. You can wear whatever you want, buddy. And the wings pin? And the wings pin. Malik smiled. Then he closed his eyes. Within 2 minutes, he was asleep. James sat there for a long time. He watched his son breathe. He watched his small chest rise and fall. He looked at the notebook on the nightstand and thought about the woman who had given it to him. He thought about the last thing she ever said to him, the very last words before the morphine took her voice. Make sure he knows he belongs. James stood up. He walked to the window. The city was dark below him. Somewhere out there, Linda Graves was sitting with her attorney, planning her defense. Somewhere out there, news anchors were arguing about whether James Carter was a hero or a bully. Somewhere out there, 5 million people had watched a video of his son being dragged from a seat. He pulled out his phone. He had one more call to make. He dialed a number he hadn't called in 2 years. It rang 4 times. Hello? The voice was deep, warm, and surprised. Pastor Williams, it's James Carter. James, my God, I just saw the news. How's Malik? He's sleeping. And you? James didn't answer that. James, how are you? I'm angry, Pastor. I'm so angry I can feel it in my bones. And I'm scared that tomorrow I'm going to stand in front of those cameras and people are going to see the anger instead of the point. What's the point? The point is that an 8-year-old boy was told he didn't belong. And the point is that I have the power to make sure it never happens again. But if I stand up there and people see a rich man throwing his weight around, they miss the whole thing. So what do you want them to see? I want them to see a father. Then be a father, James. That's all you have to be. Denise would have known exactly what to say. She always did. Denise knew what to say because she led with love, James, every single time, even when she was angry, even when she was dying. She led with love, and that's what you need to do tomorrow. James closed his eyes. I miss her. I know you do. Malik asked me tonight if she'd be proud of him. Lord have mercy, what did you tell him? I told him the truth. Good. James, listen to me. Tomorrow you walk into that airport and you don't think about the cameras. You don't think about the lawyers. You don't think about the stock prices or the senators or the talking heads. You think about that boy. You think about Denise, and you say what needs to be said. And if they don't listen, you said it yourself. You shut down the busiest airport in America to protect your son. They're listening, James. The whole country is listening. The question isn't whether they'll hear you. The question is what you're going to say. James opened his eyes. He looked at the city below. Then he looked back at the room where his son was sleeping. Thank you, Pastor. I'll be watching tomorrow. And James? Yeah? Denise would be proud of both of you. He hung up. James Carter sat down at the desk in the hotel suite. He pulled out a pen and a piece of hotel stationery. He stared at the blank page for a long time. Then he started writing. Not a corporate statement, not a legal argument, not a power move. A letter from a father to the world about his son. He wrote for 2 hours. He crossed things out. He started over. He wrote again. The pen moved and stopped and moved again. Some sentences came out whole. Others he fought for, word by word. At 11:48 p.m., he put the pen down. He read it once, then again. He folded the paper and put it in his jacket pocket, the same pocket where he kept his wife's cufflinks when he wasn't wearing them, the same pocket where he'd carried her last letter to him, the one she'd written from the hospital bed, the one he'd never shown anyone. He stood up. He walked to Malik's room. He opened the door. His son was still sleeping. The notebook was on the nightstand. The wings pin caught a sliver of light from the hallway. Tomorrow, James whispered, to no one, or maybe to his wife, or maybe to the boy, or maybe to himself. Tomorrow they're going to hear us. He closed the door. And across the city, in a small apartment she could barely afford, Linda Graves was staring at her phone. The screen was filled with notifications. Hundreds, thousands, messages from strangers. Some defending her, most not. Her attorney had told her to stay off social media. She couldn't. She kept scrolling, reading, her hands trembling. She stopped on one comment. It was from a woman who said she was a flight attendant at a different airline. It said, I've worked in this industry for 23 years. What you did wasn't procedure. It wasn't protocol. It wasn't a mistake. You looked at a black child and decided he didn't belong. And every one of us who has ever worked a cabin knows it. We know exactly what you did. And we know why. Linda put her phone down. She stared at the wall. And for the first time since that afternoon, something behind her eyes shifted. Not remorse. Not yet. But the very first crack in the wall she had built around herself. The first tiny fracture in the story she'd been telling herself for 19 years about who she was and what she believed and why she did the things she did. She turned off the light. She didn't sleep. And 8 miles away, James Carter didn't sleep either. He sat in a chair next to his son's bed with a folded piece of paper in his pocket and his wife's gold wing cufflinks in his hand, turning them over and over in the dark, waiting for morning. Morning came slow. James Carter opened his eyes at 5:12 a.m. He was still in the chair next to Malik's bed. His neck was stiff, his back ached. The cufflinks were still in his hand, pressed into his palm so hard they had left small, wing-shaped imprints on his skin. He looked at Malik, still sleeping, still holding that notebook even in his dreams, one small hand curled around the cracked leather spine like it might disappear if he let go. James stood up. He stretched. He walked to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. He looked tired, not just from the night, from the last 2 years, from raising a boy alone, from building a company while grieving a wife, from carrying the kind of weight that nobody sees because the suit is always pressed and the voice is always steady. He splashed water on his face. He put on the cufflinks. He straightened his tie. He pulled the folded paper from his jacket and read it one more time. Then he woke his son. "Malik, time to get up." The boy's eyes opened slowly. He blinked. He looked around. Then he remembered where he was and why. "Is it time?" "Almost. Get dressed." Malik swung his legs off the bed. He reached for his blazer first. Not his shirt, not his pants, his blazer. His mother's blazer. He held it for a moment, then put it on over his pajama top. He looked at James. "I need to change my shirt first, don't I?" James laughed. A real one. "Yeah, buddy, shirt first." Malik got dressed. Navy blazer, white shirt, gray pants. He pinned the metal wings to his lapel. He picked up his notebook. He looked at his father. "How do I look?" "Like your mother's son." 6:45 a.m. The car arrived. James, Malik, Patricia, and Denise rode together. Patricia was on her phone the entire time, coordinating with the press team, the airline's communications office, and the airport's media liaison. "James, we've got over 60 press credentials confirmed, national and local. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, AP, Reuters, plus about 30 independent journalists and bloggers. And Kevin? Kevin Marsh is already there. My team picked him up at 6. He's nervous, but ready. His wife came with him." "Good." "Sandra Mitchell confirmed. She'll be standing with you." "The airline's legal team?" "They tried to block Sandra from appearing, said it was a conflict of interest. Sandra told them she would resign on the spot if they stopped her. They backed down." James nodded. "I like Sandra." "James, one more thing. The video hit 14 million views overnight. It's the #1 trending topic on every platform. There's going to be a crowd outside the terminal." "How big?" "We don't know yet, but people started showing up at 6 a.m. Airport security is managing it." James looked at Malik. "You still want to do this?" Malik nodded. He didn't hesitate. 7:53 a.m. They pulled up to Hartsfield-Jackson. Patricia was right. There was a crowd. Not just press. People. Hundreds of them. Families, children, elderly couples. People holding signs. Some said, "Justice for Malik." Some said, "Kids belong everywhere." One, held by a little girl about Malik's age, said, "He's one of us." James stepped out of the car. He reached back and took Malik's hand. The boy stepped out and saw the crowd, and his eyes went wide. "Dad, all these people are here for us?" "They're here for you, buddy." "Why?" "Because what happened to you happened to a lot of people, in a lot of different ways, and they want you to know you're not alone." Malik held his father's hand tighter. They walked toward the terminal entrance. The crowd parted. Some people reached out to touch Malik's shoulder. Some just nodded. An old woman near the front was crying. She said, very quietly as they passed, "God bless you, baby." Malik looked up at her. "Thank you, ma'am." That almost broke James, right there, before they even got inside. His 8-year-old son, the boy who got dragged out of his seat yesterday, thanking a stranger for a blessing. 8:27 a.m. Inside the terminal, the press area was set up near the main atrium. A podium, microphones, cameras. The airline had wanted to hold it in a private conference room. James refused. He wanted it in the open, where passengers could see, where families could hear, where the place itself, the airport, the terminals, the gates, could be a witness. Kevin Marsh was standing off to the side with his wife, a small woman named Angela, who kept smoothing down Kevin's collar and whispering things in his ear. Kevin's hands were shaking. When he saw James, he straightened up. "Mr. Carter." "Kevin." James shook his hand. "You ready?" "No, sir, but I'm here." That's all that matters. Sandra Mitchell arrived at 8:31. She was wearing a dark suit, no airline logo. She had removed it. She walked up to James and shook his hand. "I got a call from our CEO's office an hour ago. They asked me not to come." "What did you say?" "I said I spent 3 years asking them to fix this, and they ignored me. Now I'm going to stand in front of the country and explain what should have been done. They can fire me after." "They won't fire you." "You don't know that." Sandra, by the time this press conference is over, firing you would be the worst decision that airline could make. Trust me. She nodded. She didn't look convinced. But she stayed. 8:51 a.m. Patricia handed James a bottle of water and reviewed the order of speakers. James would go first, then Sandra, then Kevin. No airline executives. This wasn't their stage. James took one sip of water. He set it down. He pulled the folded paper from his pocket. Patricia looked at it. You wrote a speech? I wrote a letter. To who? Everybody. 8:59 a.m. James knelt down in front of Malik. The cameras weren't rolling yet. This was between them. Okay, buddy, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to talk first, then Sandra, then Kevin. You don't have to say anything. You just stand next to me. If you get scared, squeeze my hand. If you want to leave, tap my leg. Okay? Okay. Malik? Yeah, Dad? I'm proud of you. Your mother is proud of you. And nothing that happened yesterday and nothing that happens today changes who you are. Malik looked at his father. Then he did something James didn't expect. He reached up and straightened James's tie, the way his mother used to. You're crooked, Dad. James blinked. His eyes stung. He took a breath. Thank you, buddy. 9:02 a.m. James Carter stepped to the podium. The cameras rolled. The atrium went quiet. Behind him stood Sandra Mitchell, Kevin Marsh, and his son. In front of him, 60 journalists, hundreds of travelers, and 14 million people waiting to hear what he would say. He unfolded the paper. Then he folded it back up and put it in his pocket. He didn't need it. Yesterday, my son Malik flew alone for the first time. He's 8 years old. He was going to New York for a youth tech summit. His mother, my wife Denise, passed away 2 years ago. She always told Malik the sky had no ceiling, that he could go anywhere, be anything, belong everywhere. He paused. Yesterday, a flight attendant on this airline looked at my son and decided he didn't belong in first class. She didn't check his ticket. She didn't check the manifest. She looked at an 8-year-old black boy in a navy blazer and made a decision based on what she saw. She grabbed him. She pulled him from his seat. She pushed him into the aisle. And she said, "Kids like you don't belong up here." The atrium was absolutely silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, not a phone notification. Nothing. 47 adults were on that airplane. They saw everything. Not one of them stood up. Not one of them said stop. Not one of them put themselves between a grown woman and a child. He looked at Kevin. Except one. Kevin Marsh, a junior flight attendant, told his supervisor to check the manifest before she approached my son. She refused. Kevin then gave Malik a blanket. He retrieved his mother's notebook from the floor. He was the only person on that aircraft who treated my son like a human being. Kevin is standing here today because courage shouldn't go unrecognized. Kevin's wife grabbed his arm. Kevin was crying. He didn't try to hide it. I shut down this airport yesterday. I want to be clear about that. I hold operational contracts for ground systems, fuel coordination, and digital clearance at this facility. When I learned what happened to my son, I froze those systems. 91 flights were delayed. Thousands of passengers were affected. I know that, and I want to address it directly. He leaned into the microphone. Some people are calling what I did an abuse of power. A senator from Georgia called it corporate overreach. Commentators have debated whether I had the right to shut down a public airport over a personal matter. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice dropped. Not in volume, in depth. Let me ask you something. If your child called you crying because a stranger grabbed them and threw them out of their seat, what would you do? If your child, the only piece of your dead wife still walking this earth, called you and said, "They told me I don't belong," what power would you not use? What phone call would you not make? What system would you not shut down? Someone in the crowd said, "That's right. I didn't shut down this airport because I'm rich. I didn't shut it down because I'm powerful. I shut it down because I'm a father. And any father in this room, any mother, any grandparent, any person who has ever loved a child would have done the same thing with whatever tools they had. The only difference is that my tools were bigger." The atrium erupted, not in chaos, in something else. Applause that started slow and built. People nodding. people crying. A man in a pilot's uniform standing near the back, putting his hand over his heart. James waited for it to settle. But I'm not here to talk about power. I'm here to talk about what we do with it. He turned to Sandra. This is Sandra Mitchell. She has worked for this airline for 7 years in customer relations. 3 years ago, she developed a comprehensive reform package. Mandatory in-person bias training, independent complaint review, manifest verification protocols, child travel protections. She brought it to her superiors. They said the budget wasn't there. They said the timing wasn't right. Sandra stepped forward. Her voice was strong, stronger than James expected. The budget is there now, she said. The airline has approved the full reform package. In-person bias training for every crew member, every gate agent, every ground staff employee. An independent oversight board for passenger complaints. Mandatory identity verification before any crew member can question a passenger's seat assignment. And a child travel protection protocol that ensures no unaccompanied minor is ever approached, moved, or removed from their seat without captain authorization and manifest confirmation. She paused. These reforms should have been in place 3 years ago. I take responsibility for not fighting harder, but they're in place now, and they will be implemented across every hub within 6 months. James stepped back to the microphone. One more thing, and this is the one that matters most. He looked at Malik. The boy was standing straight, shoulders back, notebook under his arm, wings pin on his blazer. He looked so much like his mother in that moment that James had to stop breathing for a second just to keep himself together. My wife, Denise, loved aviation. She used to take Malik to the airport just to watch the planes take off. She said every plane that left the ground was proof that human beings could do impossible things. She believed that with everything she had. Even at the end, his voice thinned. He let it. Today, this airline is launching the Denise Carter Aviation Scholarship, funded annually, $1 million a year, for minority youth pursuing careers in aviation, aerospace engineering, and airport operations. Pilots, engineers, air traffic controllers, the people who build the sky. He stopped. He swallowed hard. My wife isn't here to see this, but my son is. And every child who receives this scholarship will know that it started because an 8-year-old boy refused to leave his seat. The atrium exploded. There was no other word for it. Applause so loud it echoed off every wall and every window and every departure board in that terminal. People on their feet, journalists forgetting they were supposed to be objective. The old woman from outside somehow had gotten in and was clapping with both hands above her head, with tears streaming down her face. James stepped back from the podium. He reached down and took Malik's hand. And then Malik did something nobody expected. He tugged his father's hand. James looked down. Malik pointed at the microphone. James hesitated. Then he stepped aside. Malik walked to the podium. He could barely see over it. A producer rushed over and lowered the microphone. The atrium went dead silent again. 60 cameras. Hundreds of eyes, 14 million people streaming live. An 8-year-old boy in his dead mother's blazer with a metal wings pin on his chest opened his mouth. My name is Malik Carter. I'm 8. Yesterday, a lady on the airplane said I didn't belong in my seat. She grabbed me and pulled me out, and she pushed me. My notebook fell on the floor. My mom gave me that notebook. She's in heaven now. His voice was small, but it carried. Every syllable reached every corner of that atrium. I was really scared. I wanted to cry, but I called my dad, and he came. He always comes. He looked up at James. James was standing 3 feet away. His jaw was locked. His eyes were red. His hands were fists at his sides, not from anger, from the effort of not breaking down in front of the entire country. My mom used to say that the sky has no ceiling. She said anybody can fly. She said it doesn't matter what you look like or where you come from. If you have a ticket, you have a seat, and nobody can take that from you. He paused. He looked out at the crowd, every face looking back at him. I want to be a pilot when I grow up. I want to fly the big planes, and when I do, I'm going to make sure that every kid who gets on my airplane feels like they belong, because that's what my mom would want." He stepped back. Silence. Then the old woman in the front said, "Lord Jesus," and the room shattered. Not with applause, with something deeper, the sound of 400 people crying and clapping and holding each other at the same time, journalists wiping their eyes with the backs of their hands, camera operators stepping back from their equipment because they couldn't see through the tears, the pilot in the back pressing both hands against his face. James picked Malik up. He held him right there at the podium in front of every camera, in front of the whole world. He held his son the way you hold the last thing that matters. Malik whispered in his ear, "Did I do good, Dad?" "You did so good, buddy. You did so good." "Mom would be happy?" "Mom is happy. Right now, wherever she is. She's happy." 9:38 a.m. The press conference ended. But the story didn't. By noon, Malik's speech had been viewed 42 million times. By evening, it had crossed 100 million. Every major network ran it, unedited. News anchors who had spent the previous night debating James Carter's use of power went silent. There was nothing to debate. An 8-year-old boy had stood in front of the country and said what needed to be said better than any CEO, any senator, any commentator ever could. Martin Hale dropped Linda Graves as a client the next morning. He released a one-sentence statement. "After reviewing the full circumstances, I have concluded that my services are no longer appropriate for this matter." Linda Graves never found another attorney willing to take her case. Senator Reynolds deleted his statement about corporate overreach. He never commented on the incident again. The airline CEO, Richard Caldwell, issued a second statement. This time, he didn't use a teleprompter. He sat at a desk, looked into the camera, and said, "I failed. Our airline failed. And an 8-year-old boy just showed us what leadership actually looks like." He then announced his personal donation of $500,000 to the Denise Carter Aviation Scholarship. Kevin Marsh was promoted to senior flight attendant, not because James asked for it, because Captain Marcus Howard filed a recommendation calling Kevin the only member of his crew who upheld the values the airline claims to stand for. The airline approved it within 48 hours. Kevin's wife cried when he told her. Kevin cried too. Sandra Mitchell was named the airline's first Chief Equity and Passenger Experience Officer, a position that didn't exist before that week. She started her first day by hanging a framed copy of Malik's speech on her office wall. Captain Howard requested a personal meeting with James. They sat together for an hour. Howard told James he had thought about retiring after what happened. He said the shame of not knowing what was happening on his own aircraft was the worst moment of his 30-year career. James told him not to retire. He told him to stay and make it better. Howard stayed. The 2 passengers who had filed prior complaints against Linda Graves came forward. One was a black businesswoman named Teresa Grant, who had been questioned about her first-class seat 3 years earlier. The other was a Latino father named Carlos Medina, who had been told his family was in the wrong section on a flight to Denver. Both had filed complaints. Both were dismissed. Both were contacted by Sandra's new team, offered formal apologies, and invited to serve on the airline's new independent passenger advocacy board. Teresa said yes immediately. Carlos said he needed a day to think about it. He called back the next morning and said, "If an 8-year-old can stand up at a podium and tell the world what happened to him, I can sit in a boardroom and make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." 3 weeks later, Malik Carter returned to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. He walked through the terminal in his navy blazer. His notebook was under his arm. His wings pin was on his lapel. His glasses were straight this time. He walked to the first-class lounge. He walked to the gate. He walked down the jetway. He walked onto the aircraft. He sat down in seat 2A. A flight attendant approached him. A young woman. She knelt down beside his seat. "Mr. Carter?" Malik looked at her. "Yes, ma'am." "Welcome aboard. We're glad you're here. Is there anything I can get you?" "Just some water, please, and maybe a cookie if you have one." She smiled. We absolutely have one. She stood up and walked to the galley. And as she did, she passed a small plaque that had been installed on the bulkhead wall between first class and the galley. It was new, polished silver, engraved with 5 words. Every child belongs up here. Malik opened his notebook. He turned to a fresh page. He picked up his pencil. He started drawing. Not an airplane this time. 2 wings. Small. Gold. Just like his father's cufflinks. Just like the pin on his blazer. Just like the ones his mother believed everyone deserved. He drew them carefully. Every line precise. Every curve intentional. The way his mother taught him to draw, before her hands got too weak to hold a pencil. When he was finished, he wrote underneath in his best 8-year-old handwriting, "For Mom, we belong everywhere." He closed the notebook, the engines hummed, the aircraft pushed back from the gate, the runway cleared, and Flight 1274, the same flight number, the same route, lifted off the ground and climbed into a sky that had no ceiling. And somewhere, somehow, a woman named Denise Carter smiled because her boy was flying. Power is loud. It shuts down airports. It freezes systems. It fills boardrooms with silence and terminals with cameras. But dignity is louder. It stands in an aisle and says no. It holds a notebook and remembers a mother. It walks to a podium and speaks the truth at 8 years old with the whole world watching. A child was humiliated. A father responded, not with rage, with love, with influence used for reform, with power turned into purpose. Because sometimes shutting down an airport isn't about control. It's about reminding the world that every seat, every classroom, every boardroom, every cockpit, and every dream belongs to every child. And no one, not a flight attendant, not a system, not a country, gets to decide otherwise. Malik Carter proved that at 8 years old in a navy blazer. With his mother's notebook in his hands and his father's courage in his heart, he belonged. He always did.